Hello, and welcome to my hotel room in the beautiful city of Lviv in Ukraine. It's currently the 2nd of October 2025, and the question is, should you come to Ukraine at the moment? Ultimately, that's only a decision that you can make for yourself. And it would also depend on where in Ukraine. I'm on the very far west of Ukraine here in Lviv. It's only just over 100 miles from the city of Lublin in Poland, where I travelled from. The journey here was very straightforward. I booked the journey through Flixbus about a month or so before travelling, but in reality there were still tickets available for not much more up to the date of departure. The drive from Lublin to the border was about 2 hours. The border crossing itself took about an hour and 10 minutes in total. So we arrived on the Polish side of the border. Everyone filed off the bus. This was like a 53-seat coach with only about 20 people on it, which that may make a difference to how the journey went. I think if the bus was full, it would probably take a lot longer. But anyway, we all filed off the bus on the Polish side, entered a building to exit Poland. I got my exit stamp from Poland, and then all filed back on the bus and drove across the actual physical border through a gate where you can see in the distance there's a double or triple fence with barbed wire and everything. It's a serious hard border, as you would expect. So we drove forward to the Ukrainian immigration area, waited on the bus for a little while. There was one bus in front of us that was being processed, so we waited while they finished, and then we pulled forward. Everyone filed off the bus again, this time claiming any luggage that was stored in the luggage hold, and entered the small immigration terminal. Most people who were on the bus, I could see the blue and gold Ukrainian passports. Maybe there weren't many foreigners, but I'm not 100% sure. There was just one lady who was wearing full army camouflage gear that was processing everybody, and she asked me where I was going, what was the purpose of my visit, and was it my first time in Ukraine. Just routine questions that immigration officers ask everybody everywhere, if they're bothered asking anything at all. I answered her questions. She stamped my passport. In the bottom right hand corner, the very last page, whilst everyone from the bus is going through the immigration, the bus itself had disappeared off to a shed somewhere where they do X-ray examinations of the vehicle. So we'd all passed through immigration by the time the bus was ready. So we had a wait of maybe 10 or 15 minutes. You could wait inside, but I stood outside. I was grateful of the fresh air and natural light. So I didn't notice any particular facilities around that area. I think there was a toilet in the immigration hall, but there was nowhere to get food or drink or exchange cash, because I'd no Ukrainian cash. But eventually the bus came back from its checks, all cleared, and people could restore their luggage and climb aboard. The bus drove forward, and there was just one more barrier to go through to exit the border area. I think when the bus had been through its X-ray, they gave it some sort of a pass, which has to be handed to the guy at the exit barrier. So the barrier's raised, and off we drive into Ukraine, which, surprise, surprise, looks exactly the same as Poland does immediately the other side of the border. Lots of agricultural land. What I did notice on the road from the border to Lviv, especially quite close to the border, is that nearly every bridge over a river was currently under construction, being rebuilt. So the road takes a detour, dips down over a bit of a temporary crossing of the river, and then back up to the main road. I can only assume that in the early days of the conflict, all these bridges were bombed. As I don't think it's just routine maintenance that they're repairing every single bridge on that road. But anyway, the drive to Lviv took about 2.5 hours from the border. And according to the schedule of Flixbus, we were supposed to arrive in Lviv at 7:40 p.m. and it was actually 6:40. We arrived an entire hour early. Whenever did you take a bus journey where you arrive an hour early? And I can only assume that they've built a bit of extra padding into the schedule in case the border crossing takes longer than it did. It took us about 70 minutes, but I guess if the bus was full, it might take longer. But that was a relatively straightforward journey. That said, it does take 6 or 7 hours, and it's only just over 100 miles. But the roads are just simple country main roads. They're not highways or autobahns or motorways. And then you've got the border crossing itself. So that was the journey here. I'm currently staying in an Ibis Styles hotel, Lviv Centre, which cost me just over £100 for 3 nights with breakfast. And that the room could be for 2 people if you wanted, also with breakfast included, but I'm here by myself. It's a nice hotel, it's a nice room, the breakfast is amazing, so much choice. And I've got a little balcony with views across the city. Although the building immediately across the road, directly in my line of view, is under renovation, and there's a big crane there. But beyond that, there's some absolutely beautiful buildings. Just walking around Lviv yesterday, absolutely beautiful architecture, which I think the majority of it sort of from a pre-revolutionary USSR time, before the USSR came about, probably 19th century buildings, because the architecture itself is very similar to what I was seeing in Lublin in Poland. I said that's only just over 100 miles away. Why should it be suddenly different? Because human beings have drawn a line on a map. The main difference that I have noticed is churches. They're a very different style to what you see in Poland and further west in Europe, because I think it's mainly because here in Ukraine they're following the Orthodox Church, whereas in Poland, as you would probably expect, it's predominantly Catholic. I say you might expect because of Pope John Paul II coming from Poland. So I'll show you some snips of video and some photographs of what it was like to walk around Lviv. It's a beautiful city and well worth a visit. Should you come here in 2025? Well, it's a decision for yourself, but I felt totally safe here. I don't feel on edge whatsoever. That could change if there's an air raid siren, but I feel quite at ease here. It's a busy, bustling city that's going about life as normal. The main things that you notice about being in a country that has this ongoing conflict is that some of the church windows are covered over to protect them, and a lot of statues are either wrapped up or inside some sort of a metal cage to protect them in case there's an explosion or there's falling masonry nearby, so they don't get damaged. But there is a small visible military presence in the city. You do see men and some women walking around in camouflage gear. But you've got to remember that this city is the closest city to the Polish border and a long way from where the fighting is taking place. And not so much fighting, but the risk of drone attacks and the like. The front, for want of a better description, is really on the opposite side of Ukraine to where I am. As even here in Lviv, it's 300 to 400 miles away from Kyiv, and even in Kyiv you're relatively safe, although it does get some drone attacks. Of course, it can't be 100% safe. There is an evacuation plan in the hotel where you can be evacuated to a shelter if need be, and there's also an app on your phone where you can check the status of risk for Lviv, and you can add any location in Ukraine on that app so you can see what the current risks are. But I've thoroughly enjoyed my short visit here. I've got about another 24 hours here before I move on to my next city as I'm travelling around southeastern Europe. and I'm looking forward to coming to Ukraine again in the future. It's a beautiful country with nice people who have not been anything other than very friendly towards me, and I really do wish them all the best for the future. I will definitely come again and travel to other parts of Ukraine. Hopefully the conflict finishes soon and Ukraine will really open up for tourism. That said, it is open for tourism right now. Parts of the country, according to the British Foreign Office, are in red, which means do not travel there. That's on further east from where I am. The western parts of Ukraine are in amber, which means avoid unnecessary travel. That kind of conflicts with the Ukraine tourism website. I think it's called Travel Ukraine, which states that Ukraine is very much open for tourism. One thing to consider is that because of those Foreign Office warnings, which probably are overdue for being updated, to be honest, because of those warnings, if you do travel here, there's the concern that your travel insurance might not cover you. But what you can do, and what I did, is I took out cover for the few days that I'm here through the Visit Ukraine website. So you're actually buying cover for the few days that you're here from the Ukrainian government, and it's very, very reasonable. I think it cost me less than £6 for 4 days, so that's immediate medical cover if I should need it while I'm here. There is a war risks insurance that you can take out on top of that, which I haven't done, and I think that would be more if you were travelling further east in Ukraine towards where the conflict is very much more active. The war risk insurance pays you out a set amount of many thousands if you were to receive a serious injury as a result of the conflict. But I have no intention of putting myself in the path of any such risk, so I didn't bother with that. I just took out the health cover. So if you are looking to come to Ukraine and you were worried about your travel insurance covering you, that's the solution. Have a look at the Visit Ukraine website. So I'll show you now some video clips and mostly photographs that I've taken around Lviv, and thank you for listening to my ramble. Here's a beautiful little Soviet train. find me in my hotel room in Belgrade, Serbia. So I left Ukraine a few days ago, and I'll conclude this video with my experiences travelling out of the country. The journey was again booked through Flixbus, and it was a fairly early start. I did have to catch a bus from my hotel to the location of the bus station, which was very straightforward. I allowed far too much time and arrived at the bus station almost an hour before the departure of the Flixbus. Anyway, the bus pulled onto the stand about half an hour before the journey. Now, this is a journey that was scheduled to take around 13 hours. Boarded the bus, no problem. Took my seat, which had been pre-allocated. A lady sat next to me, a Ukrainian lady who spoke almost no English, and I certainly don't speak any Ukrainian, so there was no conversation to be had. And we made our way through the Ukrainian countryside with a couple of extra pickup points towards the Hungarian border. The journey was very enjoyable. There was a stretch of it, which I'll include in this video, which it was like driving through the English Lake District. It was absolutely beautiful, rolling hills, beautiful trees, really good roads for the most part. Better roads than you find in some other countries like Italy. Anyway, so we arrived at the Hungarian border, and here's where the journey picked up a bit of a delay, because this border crossing took 3 hours in total. No obvious reason why it took that long, and it was both sides that were taking their sweet time with everything. It was about an hour and a half on the Ukraine side and about an hour and a half on the Hungary side. Different process to what had happened entering Ukraine. So a guy entered the bus and collected everyone's passports, and we sat waiting on the bus while our passports were taken off somewhere and stamped out of Ukraine. And then the guy brought them back and handed them back out to us. But there was lots of waiting, lots of hanging around. There was a brief stop at a duty-free shop, which I didn't get off the bus, but I probably should have done, and bought a can of Coke or something with my last bit of Ukrainian money. But anyway, eventually we drive across the actual border itself, which there's 2 concrete posts, one painted in Ukrainian colours, one painted in Hungarian colours, which is kind of nice to see. I didn't take a picture of it. It's strictly no photography around a border crossing, especially when one of the countries is currently at war. We approached the Hungarian side, where we all had to get off the bus and get stamped into Hungary. But there was just lots of waiting and waiting again. And after we'd crossed into Hungary eventually, soon after it started to go dark, and the last couple of hours of the journey were quite a boring drive on Hungarian motorways, which are very, very good roads, quite a high-speed run. And we did arrive at the bus station in Budapest around about 50 minutes late. Thankfully, my accommodation in Hungary was an easy 10 or 15 minute tram ride from the coach station. So I was able to get to my accommodation straightforward enough. Now, since I've left Ukraine, on Sunday the 5th, I think it was, there was some actual warnings for Lviv where people had to go to air raid shelters. No damage was sustained in the city centre, as it's military facilities that are being targeted. However, I do believe one Ukrainian family sadly lost their lives. So it's not without thought and consideration that you travel to countries that are currently enduring this type of conflict. But I would say I thoroughly enjoyed my short few days in Ukraine, and it's most definitely open for tourism, particularly in the west of the country. And everyone you meet or you speak to are so happy and smiling that you're there, because I guess that they're probably receiving about 1% of the visitors they'd be receiving if the war wasn't currently ongoing. Just little gift shops, and you get a big smiling face when you walk in. And you're the only customer there in the centre of a big bustling city. So I'd definitely like to go back to Ukraine and see more of the country. Hopefully the war can be concluded very soon and the country can get back to normal and receive the amount of visitors that it truly deserves. So that said, thanks for listening to my ramblings, and let me know in the comments, would you go to Ukraine right now? Thanks for listening. Just a quick postscript to ask anyone who's got this far to please leave a like on this video. Add your thoughts in the comments, but please keep this non-political. I've no intentions of any political debate here. Remember, there are lots of good people on both the Ukrainian and the Russian side. And I want the best for them all. Thank you.